Hi everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Port Phillip City Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the Yalaka Willem clan of the Boonwurrung. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to the land. Just wanted to remind the gallery that Council's meeting local law requires that members of the gallery must not interject or take part in councillor debate. Any person who is called to order may be requested to leave the chamber. Notwithstanding this, the Mayor may invite members of the gallery to speak for up to 3 minutes on a report listed in the agenda. There's also time allotted to ask questions in tonight's agenda for public question time. So if you want to ask a question or speak, we request that you please complete the blue form that's available at the table just outside the chamber and hand it to a staff member. If you have registered to speak online, you must let a staff member know that you've arrived. So we encourage everyone to limit their questions and comments to 3 minutes and to avoid repeating points that have already been made by previous speakers. Please note now that the council meetings are live streamed to allow the community to watch and listen to meetings in real time. Aren't they lucky? In accordance with Council's local law, this meeting cannot be filmed or audio taped unless permission is granted by someone called the Mayor. In the unlikely event of emergency evacuation, please follow the instructions of the emergency warden. And tonight's emergency warden is? Chantal. So you boss us round in the event of an earthquake. Okay, let's start off. Apologies. Councillors, I know we have one apology, and I can inform you that Councillor Pearl texted me from the airport and he's made his transcontinental flight, which arrived half an hour ago, so he should be walking in soon, I hope.
Mayor, there's also Councillor Brand who's currently away.
And you're moving that, Councillor Simic?
I'll move that Councillor Brand is away.
Seconded by Councillor Voss. All those against? That's unanimous. All those in favour, I mean. It's going to be a long meeting, I'm struggling. Minutes of the previous meeting. Councillors, minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 7th of August 2019 and that special quick little one we had on the 14th of August 2019 have been circulated. Are there any questions relating to these minutes? If not, can I have a motion to confirm the minutes? Moved Councillor Bond, seconded Councillor Simic, the dynamic duo. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Declarations of conflict of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting? There are none. For petitions and joint letters, councillors, we do not have any petitions or joint letters on tonight's agenda. Sealing schedule. Councillors, we do not have any documents that require sealing. Public question time. We've got one question. Robbie.
Have you abandoned your pursuit of my last name, Mr. Mayor?
Look, I thought it was a strategically clever thing to just use your first name.
We are now getting quite familiar. I'm comfortable with that. I'm asking a couple of questions.
Could I ask you to read your name and
my name is Robbie Nyagwi and I'm resident in Kilda. I've got a little bit of context, then I'll ask a couple of questions in relation to the vineyard. I'm just going to quickly read a bit from our letter that we've sent to the Mayor and the CEO in relation to the matter. Overall, it is evident that the issues are quite complex, with discussions with various councils leading to a concern that nobody has a clear view on the facts of the matter, including financial terms of the proposed new lease for the vineyard, for capital works and the extent of terms for the proposed new lease. Our primary concern is that so many of the terms of the existing lease proposed in 2010 have been breached, leaving us with little confidence in the current process that apparently gives the current leasee a further 15 years and requires a substantial capital contribution from Council for the capital works which have been proposed by the current leasee. I've got a couple of questions. Why has Council not gone to the community and consulted on all available options, including other uses for the site at the vineyard? Is the 15-year lease mentioned in Council documents the one that started in 2011 with adjustments for lease lines and due to expire in 2015-16, or a brand new 15-year lease with a term until approximately 2035? What determined the current level of comfort that the Council got from the proposed new design? Has a police report been provided on the level of surveillance or not that the vineyard provides to the O'Donnell Gardens and other issues that may now arise? What investigation and information has been provided on the so-called community benefit that the vineyard proposed as part of its original lease? What legal advice did Council act on in not pursuing requirement under Section 6K to terminate the lease when the leasees failed to proceed with capital works required under the 2011 lease? Why is the Council planning to restart the process, including increasing the footprint of the vineyard, without requesting a strategic planning process? And obviously, if some of these questions can't be answered tonight, will they be able to be answered before the community drop-in session next week? Thank you.
Thanks very much. Can I ask Mr. Carroll to help us out here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are a number of questions there, but we'll make sure that we've done our best to respond to those before the community drop-in session next week. And we've got a more detailed letter as well that we'll respond to.
Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Simic?
Is that better? That's better.
Thank you, Mayor. SKM Council's recycling contractor was in the media again this week, and I saw an announcement that Cleanaway will take control of SKM. Can officers update the Chamber on Council's pursuit to overcome the waste crisis, which is manifesting in our recycling ending up in landfill, and any impact that SKM circumstances will have on Council?
Ms Davis?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We too have seen the media advice about Cleanaway's purchasing SKM's debt today. Our understanding is that SKM have appointed their own receiver and that the former receiver and administrator KPMG will now step down and Cordamentha will take over. The Metropolitan Waste and Resource Recovery Group will continue to represent us as we're part of a collaborative procurement, and as soon as we hear anything, we will be letting our community know what the future is. In the meantime, there is no collection, or there's still collection, but there is no disposal to or drop-off to waste and recycling. In the meantime, we're encouraging the community, if they can, to take their materials down to our waste transfer station, because we have got alternative arrangements, and there's been some social media about that this week.
Councillors, any further questions? Thanks very much, Ms Davis. Okay. Presentation of reports. So I'll now move on to the presentation of reports.
Excuse me, Mayor, you might want to point out to some of the people here that one of the reports has changed.
I was going to do that when we got to it. That's the safety report. Is there anyone other than anyone here for the community safety report? Other than
one speaker, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
It's Inspector Nigel McGuire.
Yeah, Nigel. So I've spoken to Inspector McGuire about that. Let's just proceed quickly through the reports. 9.1, Older Persons Consultative Committee submission to the Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety. Councillors, we have two speakers in relation to this. The first speaker is Jane Sims. Hi. Could I ask you to read your name and suburb into the record, Jane?
Yes, my name's Jane Sims and I'm from St Kilda. Mr Mayor, Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, the Older Persons Consultative Committee members have approved this submission. It was produced by members of the OPCC with the support of council officers. I'm making a formal request that council note this submission is to be made to the Royal Commission. I will give a brief overview of why we're making this submission, and then my colleague will make some further comments. Much of the focus of the Royal Commission to date has been upon delivery of services in residential aged care facilities or in the home. This submission addresses a possible gap in the debate, the broader issue of community-based care and support. This is an area that, as you'll be aware, councils have played a key role in for some time and continue to do so, the aged care reform changes notwithstanding. Councils fulfil a community population health role, promoting independence, health and well-being of their older residents, both via entry-level group-based block-funded community support programs, such as for meal delivery and community transport, and via the individual home support programs delivered through the the Commonwealth Home Support Package. Eligibility criteria aside, councils support all older residents regardless of their socio-economic status. Indeed, councils aim to support the vulnerable, culturally diverse populations that they serve, and this degree of inclusiveness is not always the case for other providers in the market. The advantages that are highlighted in this submission are that the standards of employment from within the council are reflected within the resident users' satisfaction of the services that this council provides. The council can support the older resident by providing independent information about local services, helping steer people through the maze of my aged care and the multiplicity of providers that there are in this space currently. And they can also facilitate the residents' movement from the entry-level care that the council provides into greater care. This submission points to the positives of this council community care model of aged care provision, and it recommends structural changes that would support its continuance in the future, such as greater provision of packages for frailer older people, for councils and others to forward their clients into, and a quality rating framework to assist navigation through the system. Thank you. I'll pass over now to my colleague.
Thanks very much, Jane. I should point out that I'm a member of the Older Persons Action Consultative Council Committee. Leslie, could I ask you to read your name into the record?
Oops. Sorry. I'm Leslie Gregg, and I'm a member of the Older Persons Consultative Committee and also a member of the subgroup that produced this report.
And legend. And legend.
And I'm embarrassed to say that because I have a complaint many older people have, and I was sitting behind Dr. Sims, I didn't hear what she had to say. So if I'm repeating, my apologies. Okay, is that better?
Well, it's very directional, and if you could move it closer, Leslie.
Oh, I see. Oh, sorry. I'm used to speaking without a microphone. The main things I want to say is that what the council, particularly the Port Phillip Council, has been providing up until now, in my experience as a client, has been excellent. I've had a package, a My Aged Care package, for several years now, And that's the big problem with that, is that when you have accepted a package, you cannot have any of the services that the council provide. You can't go on one of the social outings. You can't have the home maintenance person. You can't have any of their excellent people. I had a lovely girl who used to take me shopping. I have one from my package now, but I liked the other one. So that it's one or the other. And I believe the council services are going to be finished next year. So I think that's something that ought to be stopped, really. The other thing is that it's not easy. My package people do not supply all the carers. I never know who I'm going to open the door to. There are agencies they subcontract, so you never, I don't always know who I'm going to have. And that's a pity. They come and they're strange, they've never seen you before, they've never seen the house before, so not as cosy as having the same person. And this came in the mail yesterday. This is the home package consumer agreement. How many older people do you know that will be able to read all that, understand it and use it? It's bureaucratic and it's wonderful. The other disadvantage is they keep telling us that it's our choice. We can choose the care we want. But how do you know? As we said in our report, there's advertising everywhere by providers, but how do I know if I change my provider that it'd be better? So I want to particularly endorse the idea in the report that we submitted that there's some sort of, 1-star, 2-star, a rating system for providers, which could be difficult to manage, but it would be a help to older people who don't, and their adult children who don't know where to turn. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Leslie. That's great. Hear from the coalface. Do you have a question? Okay, so there are no further questions or comments from the community. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Crawford.
Will any of the members of either officers, council or members of the Older Persons Consultative Committee be speaking at the Royal Commission about these issues? That's my first question.
Through you, Mayor, I'm assuming that the regular process for Royal Commissions will be there's usually an invitation once the submissions go in, so we may be invited to speak.
Thanks, Mr. Keenan. Councillor Crawford?
I guess I'm just, having heard some of those concerns and obviously read them in the paper, is there, other than presenting to the Royal Commission, is there further advocacy that we can do? Because it does concern me that we are getting out of this space, given that we know that the market does not fill in the gaps where it should.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I probably just need to provide a point of clarity. For the Commonwealth Home Support Program, the direct service delivery that Ms Gregg was speaking about, that funding continues as block funding till July 2022. And the MAV and others are advocating about the continuation of that. The service that she was referring to is our assessment services, which I foreshadowed with Council in the briefing on 10th of April, that the Commonwealth funding for that does cease, is intended to cease on the 30th of June 2020, so next year. It's intended that the Commonwealth do a national tender to streamline assessment services. So in terms of that, Council does not have any decision to make on that. The funding will cease and that model will change. It may be that we return to Council around potential for care navigation type role or 2 roles to absolutely assist with the kind of difficulties that have been described, but that would be a budget bid to be considered by the Council.
So, councillors, if we have no further questions, do we have a resolution, or can someone move the officer's rec? Thanks very much, Councillor Simic, and thanks very much, Councillor Copsey. Do you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank the 2 speakers tonight, first and foremost, for coming and presenting to us, but also the Alderpersons Consultative Committee for the work they've done in producing this submission. What's written in the submission and what we've heard tonight is echoed by many in our community, and I've heard many, particularly older people, express very similar issues to me, particularly around the quality of council-provided services and the quality of ongoing care and relationship you can build with somebody who visits you regularly. So I'm very well versed on these issues. There are issues that we need to continue to expand on and talk about, and make sure that the voice of our aged community is heard and loud and clear in this Royal Commission process. So I'd also like to thank the officers for helping work on this on this report and work on the submission. It's fantastic that we've got the ability to participate in the Royal Commission process. So I'll probably leave it there. I think the report in many ways speaks for itself. And I'm really glad that we've gone through the process of discussing it tonight.
Thanks very much, Councillor Simic. Councillor Copsey.
I don't want to be repetitive, so I'll be very brief, but yes, this was an excellent submission, really detailed and informative, and very, very much speaking to lived experience of the changes that are being put through. I think it's very expressive and gets across the issues very well. Thank you very much for officers and the members of the committee who have put time into this, and thank you for your ongoing commitment to bringing your experience to Council so that we can make better decisions for everybody in the municipality based on what's actually happening on the ground. It's really much appreciated. Best of luck should you receive the invitation to speak at the Royal Commission, and I hope your views are heard.
Councillor Crawford.
I think this submission highlights so many of the failures of the free market to actually necessarily, or the systems we have in place to actually look after people. We've gone down a road where we assumed certain things would happen and it would be better for the person receiving the services, and as we see with very many Royal Commissions, that is not often the case. So I do hope that this excellent report and the issues highlighted with it are really taken on board by the Royal Commission and then obviously by the government to fund and to change these processes, because it's nice to have a report but we need action at the end of it. So thank you for your report to contribute.
Councillor Voss.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't going to speak to it, but certainly wanted to endorse what the other councillors have said and thank certainly the members of the Alderpersons Consultative Committee to come out with. But I'm wondering why we're not endorsing this report and we're just noting it, because I think if I'd written the recommendation, I'd like to say that we actually endorse it. Because everything in it is so important, and while perhaps some of it's not council policy and things like that, it is really critical that we take care and look after our older people in our community, because we're hopefully all going to get there one day as well. So are
you moving that as a...
Well, I'd like to... I'd like to clarify if that would be... appropriate, if there's anything that would concern the organisation if it was endorsed rather than just noted.
Just debating.
Through you, Mayor. there was some urgency, and at one stage this was going to be sent off without coming to council, so hence the notes recommendation, because it hadn't been considered by council and there were some policy positions, but council are free to endorse it now in the chamber. Yeah.
Do you want to move that
So
as
subject to that, I would like to perhaps just another sentence rather than, and endorses the position of the Older Persons Consultative Committee.
Could you just change it to endorses the attachment?
Okay,
Change the
if
word.
that's easier.
Yeah, change the word notes to endorses. Is that acceptable to the mover and seconder? But we need a seconder of this.
Through Mr Mayor, you need a seconder for the amendment that then becomes the substantive.
Yep. Seconded, Councillor Crawford. You've already spoken to it, really. It's acceptable to the mover and seconder?
No, it's an amendment now.
Yeah.
So you have to vote on the amendment.
Yeah. So I'll move to the vote on the amendment. All those in favour? Against? That's passed. So we move to the substantive motion now. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. Did you? You didn't put your hand. Sorry. I wasn't asked. Okay.
I'm not going to support this because I haven't read this document with a view to this being council policy. I've read it as we're going to sit there and all right, this is their submission, but I haven't read it enough to comprehend what's in it with regard to it becoming council policy. And I think it's remiss of us to be just changing this wording from the floor and adopting this as council policy with none of us having read this. Well, it does. If we endorse the submission, then we don't know what's in there. We haven't read it to know what's in there to be able to make this decision.
We've had the opportunity to...
Yeah, well, we've read it thinking it was just noting. We haven't read it with endorse everything that's in it. So I think that's a completely different standard to what we're agreeing to here. So I can't support it.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bond. Councillor Simmish, do you wish to close?
No, Mayor, I think enough's been said on this topic, but I certainly welcome the amendment.
Thanks very much, Councillor Simmish. I'll move to the vote now of the substantive amended motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Division. All those in favour? Councillors Baxter, Crawford, Voss, Gross, Simmish and Copsey. Against? Councillor Bond. I declare that passed. Thanks very much. I want to now go, because we've got a speaker, to 9.3. With everyone's indulgence, could I go to the draft of the Community Safety Plan? I'm going to ask for a councillor to move a deferral of this. Sorry?
It'll be an alternative motion.
We've got an alternative motion, an alternative rec.
Leave to explain that.
Sure. Yeah.
Through you, Mr Mayor, prior to public speaking on this, we've got an alternative motion which is the council defers the report. The reason for that is there was an administrative error and a portion of the report was not published in time as part of the papers for this meeting, and to give the community chance to read the full report and councillors chance to consider the report, we are recommending that it be deferred to the next council meeting in 2 weeks' time. Notwithstanding that, it would be good to hear any public speakers on this matter tonight.
Thanks very much, Mr CEO. So we do have one speaker, and I'm going to invite Inspector Nigel Maguire-White, the legend of Port Melbourne, Purse White.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Apologies, Inspector. I'm just going to request that we've got a councillor who's absented themselves, and I'm not sure what the correct procedure is here, if that councillor needs to leave the
I
room.
was
or
just
if-
seeking advice.
Well, we're in a formal meeting, so I'd seek.
Hasn't left the room. Yeah, so let's proceed. Inspector. Look, I have to apologise about the deferral, but I think it's good that we hear from you anyway.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your invitation to be here today. Certainly very proud and happy to come and talk to this motion. So I commend the Council in relation to the process that's gone through in developing the safety plan, notwithstanding some of the difficulties we've had tonight. But fortunately, I have seen the full report, so I have seen the comments that will be added for the public in due course. This plan identifies, and it's true to say, that public safety is not reliant on any one particular element, but a whole group of issues that reflect on the community and the community we serve. So without facing one of those elements and paying due credit to those issues, we're likely to miss out on some of the things that we need to do in order to guarantee the safety of the people we serve. And this report does go through in lengthy detail those issues. And I think it's important to give credit to those who've put the report together to make sure that they get the credit they deserve in relation to that. The report identifies a number of issues. So firstly, creating safe space. So there's been a lot of work done, and those of us in this room will understand the work that a whole lot of partner agencies have been involved with in around crime prevention through environmental design, and the City of Port Phillip demonstrates very much some of the work being done there, and that's being done on an ongoing basis. Certainly the addition of CCTV footage and the help that's providing, certainly Victoria Police in assessing the safety and dealing with some of the safety issues in the community is absolutely important. And certainly the oversight of that through the Community Safety Plan Steering Committee. So Council, Police and others be involved in that process, and that will absolutely guarantee any questions around the integrity of the program in an ongoing basis, not to mention the legislative and requirements that we have already and the agreements that we've already signed around that. Building resilience in the community is highly important. So I know, Mr Mayor, we've had many conversations around diversity and the support to the diverse community groups and the vulnerable groups in our community is a credit to the City of Port Phillip. The City of Port Phillip has a long and proud history of supporting all of those groups, and it is absolutely no doubt, and it's very clear, that a lack of support for some of those groups will result in people being in crisis, and those being in crisis will also impact on the safety measures because people become desperate and they do things that otherwise, if the support structures are there, they might not. So again, we stand with the Council in providing services and referring people into service providers that will enable them to avoid getting into crisis in the first instance. The third element of the plan around living healthily and reducing harm. So for us and for me, it's particularly around reducing impact of alcohol and other drugs. Again, working with the Council, the alcohol bans have had a significant impact on crime and safety in the area, and there is no doubt that, and it's no coincidence, the implementation of the alcohol bans and the introduction of CCTV footage has resulted in about a 58% reduction in crime in the areas where those were introduced. I also want to mention the work of the Port Phillip licensees group. So I meet with them on a regular basis, and the the impact that they have and the focus that they have on community should be mentioned. They are doing a lot of work around improving the drinking culture, and we certainly are working with them on an ongoing basis. And again, I noticed that that's picked up in this report, which is highly important. Our organisation works under the framework that we are part of the community and the community is part of us, and we reflect the community that we serve. I think this report goes a long way to making sure that there is inclusion in the groups that need to be involved, that the inclusion of people that are at risk, and those elements in the community that we can work to make sure that safety is improved. One of the things that reports such as this do is it highlights the achievements that we've made, but it also highlights the challenges that we face into the future. And I think it's important to note that at the moment we have, as is mentioned in the report, perceptions of safety that put us ahead of the rest of the state in terms of how our community feel. The challenge, I guess, particularly for me, is that when I meet community groups, I'm still asked about what is being done around drug dealing particularly, and some of the harm still being seen in the community. So that's an ongoing piece of work, and I recognise that, and absolutely commit ourselves as Victoria Police to working hand in hand with the council to address some of those issues. And I don't wish to dismiss them at all, but they are very important, and as much as the data can say we're doing really well, there's clearly some work for us to do, and we'll certainly continue to focus on that.
Thanks very much, Inspector. Thank you for your generous comments about the work of our officers. I agree with you. And some of the data is, as you aptly put it, really encouraging, but there are still big challenges. But the figures are very encouraging in some of the aspects of the crime level in Port Phillip. So thanks very much for all your work and for coming tonight. Thank you. So, councillors, we have an alternative recommendation about deferral. Do I have a mover? Sorry? Yeah, I'm in your hands. I'm happy to... It's a deferral, but speak to it during the moving. Okay, move Councillor Bond, seconded Councillor Voss.
I was really looking forward to this report tonight. There's some really good stories in there, such as I think it was the 58% reduction in crime on Fitzroy Street as a result of combination of effort from council officers, effort from the police, and no doubt the alcohol bans and the introduction of CCTV. The closure of the Gatwick, I'm sure all those things have contributed to that number. There's still a little bit of concern in there. There's one of the numbers in there had 2/3 of the people in our community feel safe in our community at night, which means that 1/3 don't feel safe in our community at night, and that's something we need to work on. I think that we should be very alarmed at that particular number, that 1/3 of the people don't feel safe while walking the streets of somewhere like St Kilda in the evening. So we still have a long way to go, but we've certainly come a long way from where we started.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bond. Councillor Voss.
I'm happy to second this motion to defer the report. As it's been explained, the right report didn't go out to the community, so it's important that the community gets to see everything, all the work that's been done. So it's right and proper that we defer it and then give the community the opportunity to read the report and have it come back again and speak to us, and maybe the inspector can come back again as well. But
once bitten, twice shy.
Don't have to. We have heard your views, but that's certainly why I'm seconding this. Thank you.
Any other contributions, councillors? I'll move to the vote then. On the deferral, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thanks very much. I now move back to 9.2, the Youth Places Feasibility Report. And as I'm instructed, there are no speakers to this motion. So, councillors, are there any questions? Do we have a Oh, Councillor Copsey.
It's a bit of a dixer, sorry, but I might just ask if officers could highlight, presuming this passes tonight, what kind of engagement activities we'll be conducting so that, young people in particular can have their say on this report.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question. We have already consulted quite expansively with young people, stakeholders and the community. The next stage of this would be to do further focused consultations, so targeted consultations, assuming the recommendation gets through, particularly around ideas, and then on consultation on those ideas as to how they would practically look.
I don't think that was a Dorothy Dixer at all. I thought that was a good one. Do you wish to move, Councillor Copsey? Or anyone? Councillor Simic? Councillor Crawford is seconding it. Councillor Simic?
It seems my night of moving everything.
Yeah, you're a star. I love you.
Glad to be here and participating. I'd like to first of all acknowledge that we've got members of our Youth Advisory Committee and also officers working with our Youth Advisory Committee here tonight. This process
Welcome.
of talking about a space for young people started well before our council term, I believe, but certainly when many of us got on council, we began talking about it as part of our council plan. And certainly seems to be something that most of the councillors, the majority of councillors, are committed to finding a solution for. I know that officers have spent quite a bit of time consulting with young people already to look at where some of the gaps in our community are, and there are certainly gaps identified. But also what's been identified through the process is a large number of services working with young people currently, which is really pleasing to see as well. Moving forward, and we've spent quite a bit of time with officers in the background as well, talking about different options which exist. There is an option which seems to be the preferred option currently. And one of the things that came as a result of us talking to officers was that we would really like to spend some more time talking to young people and addressing that option in particular and seeking feedback from young people on that option. So I look forward to that process now, and I want to make sure that as councillors we're publicising it as much as possible, because it is really important to hear from a wide range of people. And I've certainly, I was on, as a young person, I was on my local council's at the time Youth Advisory Committee, and I know that many young people have a broad range of issues which also older people experience, which sometimes are brushed under the carpet, and quite often an answer to a lot of the issues that young people face can be to build another skate park. I'm glad that we're not going down that path directly, but looking at the multitude of issues that young people face and making sure that we're addressing all of them. So I really think that this is really important because young people are such an important aspect of our community and quite often an aspect that doesn't have an opportunity to have their voice heard, particularly at a council level. We enhance that through the Youth Advisory Committee, but still more, there's many people that we probably don't speak to. So thanks the officer. I'd like to thank the officers for bringing this to us tonight, and I wholeheartedly endorse the next steps and look forward to participating in that process with our Youth Advisory Committee as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Simic. Councillor Crawford.
So I was thinking about, like, when I was a kid, where did I hang out? And a lot of the time actually was at home. But I know where I did hang out changed as I aged through my teenage years and what my interests were. So at 11 I played netball, and at year 9 I wanted to get to the Brisbane Mall more than anything else in the world because that's where the kids went. And then when I got older I did youth theatre. So it really changed over time what was cool, what was appropriate. And I think through the process that we've been through we have identified that that it's not easy to fit all those needs and wants into one building and in one place, given that there's different communities and access to different parts of the community, especially when you're young, you don't have a car and all of those things. So it's not as simple as building a building and the youth will come and all things will be resolved. I actually think this is a really great recommendation because it's flexible. It actually identifies that youth programs like maybe roller skating would have been seen as a great youth activity once upon a time, maybe not so cool these days, maybe it's ice skating, do you know what I mean? So those kind of needs and what's cool and what's important to young people changes. So I think this program where we look for flexible options like pop-ups in the various spaces that we've got, looking to ideas that change with as the young people's values and ideas or what sports are appropriate or interest them change. I think this is the program for it. I'm also really aware that maybe when I was a teen, going to council-run events might not have been the cooler thing, so maybe the best thing we can do is work with the people. I think it's cool now, but maybe not when I was. I think that actually working with the people who deliver these programs and already have an expertise and are already very youth focused is, like, I know there's an amazing skateboard program for diverse communities that runs and there's so many things that we as council don't actually have to deliver. We just have to perhaps provide funding for the ones that are already doing it really, really well and the flexibility. So I'm really happy that we came to this conclusion rather than spending all our money on bricks and mortar and actually not giving individualised and more appropriate programs where they're needed.
Thanks. Any other speakers? Councillor Copsey.
It sounds quite wholesome, Councillor Crawford. I remember when I was young, we used to do really stupid things like get in shopping trolleys and race them down a hill. So maybe it would have been better if I had been engaged in some good local services instead. I'm really pleased to see this moving forward. It's a priority item for council that we address this as part of our council plan, and so I am glad to see us putting some funding, investment and progress towards this goal. And I think I've really wrestled with this because I think that the community that we most need to engage with and understand is young people who are going to be using the services. So I want to thank the Youth Advisory Committee. It's fantastic to have had our Older Persons Consultative Committee and our Youth Advisory Committee both represented here tonight. Thank you for all you do in terms of your time, effort and ideas feeding into council. It is much appreciated because we want the services that we're delivering to actually meet the needs of youth in the city of Port Phillip. I have wrestled with whether that's best to do through a bricks and mortar big build, or if it's going to be better if we make sure that places in Port Phillip generally are accessible and welcoming and inclusive to youth. That's where I think that this funding option will take us, and I really hope that it's going to, as well as continuing the existing funding that we've got, the additional grant funding might enable us to make a whole bunch of places more inviting, accessible and, and valuable for young people in the city. I still remain really open to investigating other options if this doesn't prove to satisfy that need. But mostly tonight I'm just pleased to see that we're getting on and doing this in partnership with young people in the city. So thanks very much to the officers for the work in progressing this. Thanks again to the Youth Advisory Committee and all the young people who have brought us to this point. Let's get on and do it.
Thanks, Councillor Copsey. Any further speakers? Do you wish to close, Councillor Simic?
Just to clarify that there's nothing wrong with skate parks. They serve an important purpose as well. Thank you.
I'll move to the vote. All those in favour? That's all those against? That's unanimous. Thanks very much. We now go to 14.1, Palais Theatre, presentation of annual report. We have no speakers from the community. See you later. Councillors, any questions? If we have no questions, you wish to move? In an overwhelming sense of vindication, it's been moved by Councillor Bond and seconded by Councillor Crawford.
I will speak to that overwhelming sense of vindication. I think it was wonderful to read this report. I know that this covers a lot of the period where it was closed for renovation and a lot of work was happening, 2017, early 2018. So it's not quite a full year of operation of the Palais Theatre, and they're already up to, according to the report, I think it was 95 or 97 shows last year. So when they're, this year, I'm sure it'll be more again. The customer numbers will go up, the utilisation will go up. I think, credit to Live Nation. They've done a wonderful job, and how good a job they're doing is probably reflective on the list of people who currently rent it, which was in the report. At the time we issued the lease to Live Nation, we were told that all these different groups were never going to use it. They would ban it, black ban it. It would become the biggest white elephant in Melbourne. You look at the list of the people who currently lease it the most now, and it's all those groups who we were told would never actually use it. So we now have it. It's official that those fears never materialised. The scaremongering, and that's exactly what it was at the time, didn't come to fruition. I think it was a great decision of the previous council to give this lease to Live Nation, and this report from Live Nation is proof of that. So I maintain it was the best decision made from that previous council, and can't help but feel vindicated here, Councillor Gross, as you mentioned. So I welcome this report and urge my fellow councillors to support it.
Good on you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Crawford.
Sometimes I don't speak, but tonight is not one of those nights. So I realise from looking at all the people, all the amazing acts and performers that have come to the Palais and are listed to come, how little I get out. And that I'd love to get out more or have more money to be able to attend, because there is so much literally within walking distance of my home. That's pretty exciting, and walking distance for a lot of our locals, which is really exciting. But the other thing that really amazed me, and I'm very grateful to what Live Nation is doing, one in retaining the glorious, with obviously state and our contribution, the glorious centrepiece that is the Palais for entertainment in this city. But also the thing that really extra excited me was the Palais Theatre Community Fund. So I've long had a theory that that's how they should raise money for the film and television industry. Every film ticket that gets sold, you charge 50 cents, and that goes back into the industry, which we desperately need at the moment. But this Palais funding, it's not just gone back into arts organisations, but local community, and the more acts that go on there, the more money gets raised. So it's really exciting. It's not a set amount. It can grow with every ticket sold. So come and visit the Palais because it helps our community. But, everything from St Kilda Mums to Raucous Theatre to Christchurch to Linden, it's really actually helping smaller grants for our local community. So I love that even more. So not only is it enhancing and growing the Melbourne entertainment scene and drawing people to our state, it actually is also supporting our local community. So I'm very happy to read and accept this report.
Thanks very much, Councillor Crawford. Any other speakers? Councillor Voss, as one of the members of the council that Councillor Bond said it was the best decision of that council. Big call.
I'm not sure about the best decision, but one of the many good decisions that were made. We certainly argue whether it was the best or not. But I just wanted to also reiterate what has been said here as well. But I have been to quite a few events. I don't think I get out much, but anyway, I've actually been to quite a few events, and actually quite a few of the Palais Theatre Community funding events, and I have to say that they are very exciting, and the community that goes along to them are extremely grateful. So for $1, the Community Theatre Fund is available, and I was really pleased to see in this report a review of that. going forward, because while it's $1 to hire the venue, actually the hire of security and all the other things that, that actually cost money, cost over $10,000 for each one of these little community groups to actually find, to be able to, use the Palais Theatre. So that's actually quite a high hurdle to jump over for many of these groups, because they're there to raise money. In fact, they have to pay a lot of money to actually use the event. So do they actually make the $10,000 to actually, so it's actually quite a fine line. So pleased that they're looking at that, and I would encourage, to find more creative ways around, that high expense. But well done to the Palais, well done to the council officers, and for making sure that the capital works are going well, along with the state government, and really pleased to see such a full event schedule already there and going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Voss. If there's any other speakers, I'll move to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thanks, councillors. 14.2, status of council decisions and questions taken on notice recorded by council since October 2016. So there's a lot of questions. We have no speakers from the community. Councillors, are there any questions? Moved, Councillor Copsey. Good on you. Seconded by Councillor Gross. Do you wish to speak? I don't wish to speak. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Move to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Assembly of Councillors, 14.3. Do I have a mover? Moved, Councillor Pearl. Seconded, Councillor Copsey. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Pearl? Councillor Copsey? No. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. And that ends our items for the agenda. We have no notices of motion, reports by councillor delegates. Any reports? Oral reports? 17, urgent business. We have one item of urgent business, which is a we have one item of urgent business, being a proposal to support Overdose Awareness Day on the 31st of August. I need a mover and seconder for council to accept the item of urgent business. Moved, Councillor Copsey, seconded, Councillor Baxter.
Yeah.
Do you wish to have a question, Councillor Boss?
I would like the opportunity to ask a question just when you're ready.
Sure. So I'll now put the motion about urgent business. All those in favour? All those against? Declare it carried. 17.1. Proposal to support Overdose Awareness Day on 31 August 2019. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this item?
Mayor, is it possible, please, for the urgent motion to be read out?
Sure, I will read it out. The Council 1 recognise the importance of Overdose Awareness Day on 31 August. This day was initiated in St Kilda by the Salvation Army as an important and solemn date in the calendar. In order to commemorate this day, the owners of significant buildings are being asked to light their buildings in purple. 2. Approves expenditure from Council's operational budget for the purpose of lighting the St Kilda Town Hall with purple lights to show Council's support for this event. 3. Wishes our partners and collaborators well in the remembrance of this solemn and important occasion and encourages community members to support these activities. Sure.
Thanks, Mayor. Can I just ask what the expenditure is, how much money we're asking for, and have we received this request in the past? I do recall there was a request 2 years ago to light the Town Hall purple as well, but I'm not sure if that was for another
charity.
That was
for another charity.
different charity?
Different charity, and we didn't do that because the town hall was lit blue for the St Kilda Festival. So the mayor and the deputy mayor at the time multitasked with that blue lighting.
And how much does it cost, Mayor?
$1,100. But I'll ask. Yeah, Mr. Keenan.
Through you, Mayor, the indication from the people who provide the lighting for the hall for various functions have said it would be $1,100. Yeah.
Councillor Crawford?
Not that I am against Overdose Awareness Day, but have we not refused other organisations, similar to Councillor Pearl's question? So we have no clear process for defining who we light up the hall for.
One question.
You know, so do we have a process for lighting up?
And there's a second question.
Yes, and have we not? We have refused other people before, though.
I'd have to take that on notice. Since I've been here, I'm not aware of that. There is a policy about the use of the flag and what flags will be used, but I'm not aware of a policy around lighting the hall. Since I've only been here 9 months, so in that time I'm not aware of any other requests, but I can...
Mr Carroll's more long-standing, so...
Yeah. Through you, Mr Mayor, I don't know if I'm able to help. It's been done on a case-by-case basis in the past, is my recollection of it. Some we've done because it's worked out conveniently while we've been doing the St Kilda Festival, and we've done the lighting for a couple of weeks beforehand. In other cases, we've declined it because it was too expensive. What I will commit to doing is reviewing our broader flagpoles policy and other policy, and incorporating some other things like lighting of the hall. We also had things around banners and stuff like that as well.
Councillor Voss?
Thank you. My original question was around the price, so that's been answered. But when you say lighting the hall, do you mean the front of the town hall? I just wanted to clarify those words.
Through you, Mayor, yes, in a similar way to, I believe, the hall. Well, I know I drove past the hall was lit up during the marriage equality debate. I think it's been lit in the past for midsummer, and it was lit for the film festival. Yeah, so it would be lighting the front of the hall. Yeah.
Okay, so there's been some questions. I'm cognisant of the fact that we don't have a mover and seconder yet. Don't think. Do we have a mover? I'm happy to move. Or do you want to move? Move, Councillor Simic. Move the seconded. I'm happy to move it, but it's been moved, Councillor Simic, seconded Councillor Gross. So, do you wish to? Are there any further questions? Do you wish to speak, Councillor Simic?
I acknowledge that this was brought to us today by the Mayor, and in our councillor only time we discussed the appropriate way to draw this to council's attention in the time that we had before the 31st of August. The decision was made that Councillor Gross would bring a notice of motion tonight so that we have a formal process. I acknowledge the questions that have been asked tonight about how we've made decisions in the past. I note that in the flags policy that came to us, there was a section around banners, and we decided that to remove that section because that was something that councillors had access to, the opportunity to put in a process to have banners put up, not necessarily something that the community had access to, whereas the community flags the community did have access to. So as a result, we're left in this area where we do have to bring items to council's attention on a case-by-case basis. I think that this is an appropriate process given that there's some expenditure involved, and we have to examine that expenditure carefully. And it's also a great opportunity for us to formally, in a council meeting that's public, express our commitment to making sure that we acknowledge days like this. I know that this is also part of a campaign which council has been involved in since this council term to raise awareness around drug addiction and alcohol abuse issues in our municipality, and I've received great feedback from members of our community in the past, motions that have been moved around support for pill testing and supporting for harm minimisation activities. This is also an important opportunity for us to destigmatise some of the vulnerable circumstances that people find themselves in, and to make sure that we're discussing them in a mature way as a community and working together to overcome the problems that we face in our community with things like overdose. So I technically am moving this tonight, but I would like to thank the Mayor for bringing this to our attention and throw my support behind it, and I really hope that other councillors will support this tonight as well.
Thanks, Councillor Simic. I'm going to pick up one of the themes that you mentioned. This came to me as a request from John Ryan, who's the CEO of the Pennington Institute, which is started as the Needle Exchange lobby group, and then went to further and wider harm minimisation approaches to addiction and drug taking. Overdose Awareness Day really flourished in the city of Port Phillip about 10 years ago, when you might recall the number of heroin deaths were sort of on an upward scale, and it was chronic and tragic. And Councillor Simic used the word stigma, and some of the most moving events in the hall below was on Overdose Awareness Week, when the parents with stigmatised children came to get support, recognition and remembrance for their dead children. And this is a small token effort to try and address the issue of stigma and to help those family members who are left after not only the trauma of having a drug-addicted child, not only surviving the death of that drug-addicted child, but then sort of not being able to mourn in a public way because of the shame and humiliation surrounding some drug use. So, look, this is a confronting issue. The City of Port Phillip, and, you know, I have to say, assisted by Councillor Simic, has tried to continue the tradition of harm minimisation and moving into new models for making the world safe. So I think it's a very important day because of my experience at this place. And so when I was asked by the Pennington Institute to spend a small amount of money in municipal terms to promote an issue for incredibly vulnerable parents who've really suffered, I thought this is something this council could do. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Crawford and then Councillor Pearl.
I'm going to do something unexpected. I'm not going to vote for this. And it's not about Overdose Awareness Day. It's just we've said no to some and yes to others. And I just think once you start, it's how do we say no? Like the only one we've actually done before is the Pride, the marriage equality debate, and also one that happened to coincide with a film festival. I don't think that once we do this one, how do we say no to all the requests that come through? I don't think we have a clear way through, so I will not be supporting this tonight. I am in support for all the Overdose Awareness Day and the parents and the much suffering that's gone on, but this particular motion I'm not behind.
Councillor Pearl?
Councillor Gross and Councillor Simic, you put that very eloquently, and I'll temper my comments slightly because you opened my eyes a bit more to this event than perhaps I previously had before just reading this when I got here this evening. I agree with Councillor Crawford that the one time this council has done that, I don't actually think that was even under request from official request from a group. I may be wrong on that, but I think we made the council made a decision, and lighting the town hall for one day and lighting it purple, I don't think adds much value in terms of the cause that you're rightly supporting here. What would add more value is the sort of events that you talked about that occurred here 10 years ago, and I'd prefer to see, albeit this small amount of money, which would probably cover the cost of a similar type event that would help and benefit people in our community. That's better allocation of resources, but I won't support it, albeit I support all the efforts of the St Kilda Salvation Army and the groups that you identified before.
Councillor Copsey and then Councillor Bond.
Thank you for bringing this, Mayor, and Councillor Simic for moving it. I'm very proud of the role that the city has played in the creation of this day. I think it's vitally important. Those councillors who are worried that, Councillor Crawford, I tend to agree that it would be good for us to have a policy to respond to these sorts of requests going forward, but the fact of the matter is we don't have one currently, and so the proper way for us to do it is to, at the moment, decide case by case. It's an important cause. It's a trifling amount of money in terms of city expenditure, and it is, with the limited amount of time that we have prior to the event taking place this year, a meaningful way that we can contribute and a visible way that we can contribute to this important debate. So I'm very open to us developing a policy in future, but I don't think necessarily that that's a reason that we shouldn't support this event on this day. And Councillor Pearl, I'm really open to us discussing as councillors how we do more next year as well. But what I would say is let's make this a small effort this year to acknowledge and spread awareness about the importance of the day, to support all of those organisations that are still battling the stigma that was referred to, for people who work in the field as well as those experiencing alcohol and drug harms. It's important that they know that they have allies in advancing harm reduction, in standing with the communities that have been affected, the families that have been affected, and I think that it's something that we can do this year, so that we should. Overdose Awareness Day really is about acknowledging grief felt by families, often suffered silently, particularly in the past, and I think that this is a really beautiful thing that we can do to show that this city still stands with those people in a very sad time. And I think it's unfortunate, actually, that the community safety plan has been deferred. It would have been nice on an evening where we were adopting a plan that really has reduction of harm from drugs and alcohol at its centrepiece, to have been able to have some concrete actions to take towards that as well. But I'm sure we'll get around to that shortly. I would ask that councillors support this. It's not a difficult or onerous ask on us this evening, and it would be very meaningful to families who've gone through this and the services that work hard in our community.
Thanks very much, Councillor Copsey. Councillor Bond?
Yeah, I got my rates bill last week. I opened it up, it was $1,100 exactly. So yeah, my reaction wasn't, that's a piddling amount of money. $4,000 for us, yeah. So it's great that the councillors who don't pay rates thinks that those that do pay rates are only contributing piddly amounts of money. The flippancy with which this council spends money at times astounds me. This is another example of that. I don't know how some of you sit here and look groups such as the ratepayers of Port Phillip in the eye and tell them, genuinely we're trying to save money, we really are an efficient organisation. Then we run around and throw money like this, $1,100 to light the town hall up in purple for one day. It just can't be justified under any circumstances, regardless of what the cause is.
Thanks, Councillor Bond. Any further speakers? Councillor Baxter?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I do pay rates, and Yeah, but I'll just let you know that I do pay rates,
Councillor Bond,
and that I obviously we are stewards of the rates and fees that come in, and we spend that money wisely. One of the things that we do is we support disadvantaged people in our community. That money is spent wisely. You could cut all sorts of things in order to give people some dollars back in their pockets, but we have to actually look at whether that is disadvantaging the community or advantaging the community. And in this way, we have heard from people here about how we can show support for literally some of the most vulnerable people in our community, people who have either died or almost died from overdosing. We're talking about, yes, this is a small amount of money in a budget of over $200 million. It's for you to play political games with that and to say, oh, how dare they say that's a small amount. It is in our budget size. It is definitely a small amount of money for that. It is a small amount of money for the impact that we think it will have. And as a ratepayer, I'm more than happy for our rates to go towards us advocating strongly for those people in our community that are the most disadvantaged and vulnerable. And I think it's disgraceful to try and erase that pain by talking about how much you pay in rates.
Thanks, Councillor Baxter. Do you wish to close, Councillor Simmons?
Look, Mayor, I'm really disheartened that there's a councillor laughing into their microphone sitting next to me when making what I believe
Point
to
of order,
be...
can you ask him to speak to the motion before us?
Sorry? Thanks, Councillor Sinich.
When we're talking about an issue that's touched so many people's lives, and an issue that Councillor Gross and Copsey and others have spoken so eloquently about tonight, because it is an important issue and we should not be laughing in the face of the families who've experienced these awful circumstances. We should be looking at ways to support them. And I'd like to urge all councillors to keep the debate at that level of thinking about the people that we are representing here today. And we're charged with representing everyone in our community, and that does make sure that we distribute our funds appropriately, but that we also advocate on important issues. And tonight we have the opportunity to do that. So I really urge councillors to support this important cause.
Thanks very much. I'll move to the vote. All those in favour? Against? We've got a tied vote, so I have to cast. So, as the chair, I have to cast. I inevitably take the position when I cast of voting in favour of the officer's recommendation. In the absence of an officer's recommendation, I'm sort of not guided by my usual protocol, so I am going to cast in favour of the mover and seconder of the motion. Get used to this while Councillor Brown's away. There'll be a bit more of this. There's been a call division. All those in favour? Councillor Gross, Simic, Copsey and Baxter. All those against? Councillor Bond, Pearl, Voss and Crawford. And the casting vote, myself, I'm casting in favour, Councillor Gross. So I declare the motion carried. You're probably right. It's nice of you to concede. 18, confidential matters. Councillors, we have no confidential items tonight. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed.